Hello guys, I'm getting all sorted out. Okay, so today is the first day of working on this new setup, and we are copying, like, this is for my Tuesday class where we are emulating Cezanne, and one of the things is that he always used these vertical axes and canted them on tilt. And I did this guy, but I kind of made him a little bit too canted. So I'm gonna fix him first before I get moving on with other things in this painting. And then I'll continue working on I have like a compote of apples, and then we'll see how far I go. So the thing is, I don't want to make my bottle 100% straight up and down, because that Cezanne purposely would kind of tilt things slightly. This is a little bit too strong. This is like a 4 or 5 degree tilt, and really I want like more like a 2 degree tilt. So I'm gonna fix that real quick, and then like dive into the new stuff that I'm gonna be doing. So I am looking forward to that. I am, so yeah, getting started. So I want to go just more like that. So I'm going to first chisel out. Actually, so this is cad red, so I know that will be very staining if I don't kind of clean that up. So I'm going to clean that up first. That's more of the line that I want to do. Which means there. Okay. And then so one tool that I often keep on my palette are knitting needles, because knitting needles are the edges are parallel and they're straight until the very tip, where like a paintbrush, is tapered. So I'm actually going to use my knitting needle to help me find my center line for my bottle. And so that's my center line right there. So essentially that's my center line. And if I want it to be, and then I want, that's my, so like that's my true center. But I want, if I move it just a slightly over, I can create. There's my center line of the bottle. So then that helps me find there. Okay. So I'm gonna get the background in. I'm gonna kind of like fix some of that background. It's all good. Like, oil painting is so very forgiving. That's one of the reasons why I love oil painting so much. So that helps me out. Okay. And then so I'm gonna use a little bit of ultramarine blue, because Cezanne liked to outline things with like blues, be it ultramarine blue or Prussian blue. I'm using ultramarine blue in this setup. There. Right there. Okay, it's a little better. Good. Okay, so yeah, there we go. Okay, so kind of figuring that out. Okay. Still. Yep. I'll probably need to. Well, that will work for now. Okay, so I need to get my mixture. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Okay. That's looking a little bit better. So I've got this beautiful wine bottle. Getting that deep in, that dark color. I can obliterate that center line I put in to figure things out. Thank you, Susan. I'm so glad. Thank you guys, all of you guys, for showing up. For all of you guys that are tuned in today, this is the first day of our second still life that is in the style of Cezanne. So every Tuesday this spring, I have been teaching a still life class in the tradition where we're analyzing the work of Paul Cezanne, and it's been a really fun class. And the 2 previous weeks we worked on one setup, and now this week we're working on our second setup, and we have been analyzing how Paul Cezanne created his setups, his still lifes, and then we are now trying to incorporate some of those techniques into like new work that's never been created again. And one of the things that Cezanne did with his setups is that several objects typically were like the vertical axes would be canted. It would be distorted and not truly vertical. Like you might have one object or 2 objects that are vertical in the still life, but then he'd have other primary objects that would be off kilter a bit, and the goal of why he would do that is because it created a visual tension in the piece, and so then he maximized that visual tension that was being created in that composition. So that's kind of what we're doing. What's so essentially same. So I'm trying to incorporate a slight cant to this object. This compote, the foot is more of a straight on, but then the orientation of the top of this compote has been tilted on like its axis, or it's as if I'm stepped up a lot closer and observing this compote differently than I would the foot or even this bottle, and the bottle's been tilted. So it's a little bit of we're using multiple viewpoints to create the dynamic feeling of this piece, and that's something that Cezanne did with all of his still lifes, and in some ways it's very influential into modernism. So I am trying to incorporate some of those same features into this new painting, trying to learn how to paint like Cezanne did, and then like all of my students are doing the same thing, and so we're working on that. I'm gonna So we're having fun getting. So now I'm moving towards. I'm going to move over to painting this guy. I've already kind of started, and it's the white paint and this blue ultramarine outline. So you really pick up a lot of paint. It's kind of a messy setup, so to speak, but it's okay. So I'll have to clean that up later, but I'll get some paint down. It picks up all that blue edging. Just no getting around that. That's okay. And this goes down. Up some of the red from the apples. There we go. Okay. And then, oops, I didn't realize that, but I picked up lots of blue. Okay. I guess that just happens. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, the tabletop is a yellow ochre, so I'm going to get that yellow ochre in. And so the yellow ochre that is in shadow is not a very clean yellow ochre. So it's mixed with yellow ochre, a little bit of quinacridone violet, and I can't remember what else I put in. I think yellow ochre, quinacridone violet is what I used for this yellow that's in shadow, and then this yellow of this edge of the table too. So I really do need to get into the compote, but I like painting adjacent areas. So that is bright yellow, but I do know that like I've got some of that shadow yellow down here. So I'm gonna go ahead and preemptively paint some of that. And then I'm picking up more of the blue. There's no getting around that. And then like right here, when I was blocking in, I actually just painted it blue. So that's really gonna pick up. Yeah, okay. Yeah. You know, Susan, I agree. The wonky perspective is something that I it's like I don't mind so much the different viewpoints, especially if it makes something more interesting. It's the canted vertical axes that drives me nuts. I'm really having a hard time with that. I really wanted to straighten it all the way up, but I just improved it by a few degrees instead, or what I perceive as an improvement. But it's, you know, it's good. It's good to kind of like explore this methodology, which is so counter to my internal likes. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna put a little bit of dark there. Well, to Nubia, I appreciate your interest in seeing my palette. Sign up for one of my classes. When you're in my classes, I have a second camera on my palette. And so, but for these Instagram lives, it's not as easy. So you get to see me paint. But I'm glad you're here. Okay, so I want to get that in. So that's yellow ochre, and I think I'm actually going to mix a little bit of raw sienna too into my yellow ochre. So yeah. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just putting a little bit of getting stuff in. I guess funny thing is I'm really in the mood for there. And so like one of the things that's fun is that your verticals tend to be darker in value than your horizontals. So I get to play with some of those ideas. On this piece too, and I'm gonna actually lighten, oops, it didn't lighten that much. I'm gonna put a little bit of a lighter value because I want that feeling of like the light hitting that tabletop. So. It's not as light. Okay. And then, let's see. Oh yeah, I wanted to do that. And I'm going to assume that there's just a little bit of value shift back there. So this is, I'm painting and demonstrating in like the Cezanne methodology of painting, which is definitely kind of it's an interesting way of looking at your setups, because Cezanne always used the multiple perspectives. He never used true like 1 point perspective in his still life setup, and always, you know, he was always exaggerating, or he was always exploring and like just making things different. So, and his apples, everything was like kind of done in as color, you know, he always was investigating color and form. He didn't, like, he had this one term about that there is no such thing as modeling, but instead it was more about modulations. So the idea was that like when, you know, that when you're creating modeling form, you're actually having to think more about making the color modulations as the color shifted as it moved around the form. And so his work was good, and he always, you know, he had, I just really liked the way he put things and shared things. I may not always be crazy about the way certain things were distorted, because I am a realist. I like painting like things that look very realistic. However, I have learned so much from copying him this term. We are on our 7th week of this term. We've got 2 more classes after this, and it has been an amazingly good exploration. We have been learning, you know, the amount of color variety that is in his paintings is just, you know, so interesting and so helpful. And whoops, that might be a bit too dark. Yep, that is too dark. Oh well. So there are dark passages that I want to make sure I'm capturing. So I am using a mixture of dioxine purple and alizarin crimson to create some of the really dark shadow shapes that I'm seeing on my apples. I mean, because in some ways it's almost black, but Cezanne didn't use, you know, he didn't really use black. He mixed his blacks with different colors because, and so I'm using this mixture of purple and alizarin crimson to create some of those darker values that I'm seeing. There's like really dark values in here, so I need to get that dark value in right there. And yeah, just having a grand old time with this setup. So okay. Yeah. Really, really fun. So what I'm noticing is that I need to make the compote just a little bit rounder down here. Let's see. That goes there, and then I need to make more. Okay, and so then I've got this apple needs to come down. Yeah, and that's dark. There's a dark shape in there. So, and like I'm gonna put that red base in. I think. So when I'm painting, I use a full color palette. For those that are not my students, and I see that you guys are logged in, thank you for being here. I'll just chatter a little bit about my palette. So I use a full color palette, and I use that full color palette because I really, really like having as much control over my color mixtures as possible. And I want to have my colors to start off as saturated as I can get them. And by having a full color palette, that means I've got, I have a lot of options that are available to me that allow me to have this very full and colorful palette. And then what that does is that it gives me an opportunity to I get to make the decisions on how saturated or desaturated a color mixture is. That's the one thing that I dislike about limited color palettes, is that when you're working in a limited color palette, you're in all painting, tonality, getting your accurate values is important. But when you're using a limited color palette, tonality is the primary way you express yourself, because certain colors just are not possible to be mixed. You have to some pigments just don't mix certain colors, where so with using a full color palette, you have that ability to really shift and adapt with your color notes, and you can make things more saturated or desaturated as you go along. But that's only if you've got like a full color palette, because because it's so easy to, let's see, I need to make sure, is that right? I think that's right, yep. Oh, dang it, picked up the wrong color. It's so easy to shift to when you've got a limited color palette, you can't go as saturated as you want with certain colors. And I like having the ability to have total control over my color palette. That's one of the reasons why I use a full color palette, because it gives me more freedom in the decisions I make with regard to my paintings. I think I just probably massacred that explanation, but because I have that idea in my head, I use 3 cadmium reds. I have cadmium red vermilion, cadmium red medium, and cadmium deep, and I also keep cadmium orange on my palette. And for my cadmium yellows, I keep cadmium yellow, cadmium lemon, cadmium yellow, like your medium value, which depending on the manufacturer, it's either called cadmium yellow medium or cadmium light pale, depending, like I said, the different manufacturers call them different things. But I have like a cadmium lemon, which is your cool yellow lemon, like kind of like green yellow. And then I have my cadmium like normal middle value range, and then I have cadmium yellow deep, and like all of those, all of them have their uses and their importance. Let's see. Okay, trying to get that guy to read well. Okay, that's how that's turning out. And this summer, I'm going to be teaching a 6 weeks like oil paint color essentials, where we'll be diving deep into the different lessons about color mixing, paint mixing, dealing with warm, exploring different exercises on warm and cool color palettes, and how to analyze warm versus cool color temperatures, and just really diving deep into, getting to that point where you hopefully by the end of the 6 weeks you'll have a very strong foundation of what it is, like the characteristics of your oil paint, and the pigments will be it'll be just I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be a really fun class on just diving into the geekiness of what are your pigments, what are the materials that you're using when you're painting with oils. Okay. So that guy's coming together. I'm kind of really diving deep into these apples. It just feels like the right thing to be doing. So sometimes when I'm painting, I'll go through things pretty fast, but today it feels like I feel like Cezanne would have spent a little bit more time in truly developing these apples. So that's what I'm doing today too. I'm going to do the same thing. I am creating modulations of color on these apples. Okay. Okay. So, Cezanne's a pretty fun artist to be trying to emulate. I do really value all the things he brought into the art world. And there we go. It needs to go darker in value. Just trying to keep it too red. There we go. Okay. So it's coming along. I've got some pretty good shapes going on. And I know that I'm gonna pick up the blue. So like Cezanne always started his paintings either outlines with like ultramarine blue or actually even like Prussian blue, but Prussian blue is like such a unforgiving blue that I started this setup with an outline of ultramarine blue. But even with that, which is a much more forgiving blue, it's still so bright, and it's really making a challenge. But I think it needs to go round more. I'm making that curve too angular, not round enough. So let's start from here instead. There. That's better. See, look at that. I'm picking up the blue. That's okay. But that helps me. But what it does is it also helps me figure out that I need to bring those apples down a bit. Okay. Okay. Haha. It's funny, now that I've got that curve a little bit more accurate, means that this curve is kind of inaccurate. And it's going to have to go down more too. But I can figure that out. Oh, and even that curve needs to be adjusted too. But okay, so that's good. So right here. And then I've got that shadow shape. This is in shadow, so I want to get that in. Now my compote has lobes, but for this phase, I'm going to first simplify it by not putting the lobes in. And then as I move along, then I will put the lobes in. But it's easier to just look at the form first and make the corrections. Okay, so what that tells me, oh, my loop, maybe, yeah. Okay, so my compote needs to get a little bit bigger and wider, but it's coming along. That helps me. Okay, let me see what needs to be done. So like this, shaped like that, and then it comes down like that. Oops. Okay. 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 Needs to come out just a little bit. Thank you guys. So I really love just pushing paint around. There's nothing better, I think, in life than just slowing down and painting. You know, forces you, it's a pleasant force where it's like encouraging you to slow down, to get very present. Don't get wrapped up into all the shoulds and gottas, but instead really slow down. And like, you know, I think painting is like one of the best things for you. Okay, so I've got that, and I've got like I'm going to put some of the shadow shape down. Oh, it might be a little bit too dark. Okay. So yeah, so I'm just having fun pushing paint around and kind of getting things done. Now, Cezanne liked to outline his things, his objects with blue. I'm going to do that right now, actually. It's not something that I would inherently do on my own, with my own work, but for this class, we're trying to explore like what it would be like to paint like Cezanne. So even though this may not be like my way of solving, like how to make things feel more like to identify the edges or whatever, it's a good learning experience to get out of your comfort zone and to try something that maybe you wouldn't do on your own, and to see how like it would work. Like how does it work to explore how edges, how you, like when you make a hard like blue outline, what is it? Jihad, no, this is not paper with gesso. This is actually this is linen. This is oil. This is a piece of oil primed linen that I have. So I'm creating, these outlines and I'm creating that idea of, he did this in so many of his paintings, not every painting, but so many of his paintings relied on these outlines to create the sense of space. So I know your original. Okay, we're having trouble loading this live video. Am I out? Okay. Please try again is what it says. Okay, the outline is in ultramarine blue. No, Beth, this is ultramarine. I'm using ultramarine blue. I'm not. What I've discovered is the Prussian blue is too strong for my personality. So I've just been using, like right now I'm just using ultramarine blue. You could use the Prussian blue, like for example in the first setup I'm trying to think. In both our first and second setup, it was obvious that he used Prussian blue instead of ultramarine blue, because the blues had a really distinctive green cast to them, and so but I'm using ultramarine blue just because it's a little bit more forgiving. It's still pretty strong though, I have to admit, but it's working. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I want to get this edge right here. Oops, I picked up some of the red. Shucks. But that comes with the territory. But now I want to fix that. So I think there. Fixed it a little bit. Okay, so that's it for today. So we'll be, for my students, we'll be working on this we can work on this setup till the end of the term. And of course, if you want to work on any of the other setups we've used in class, you're welcome to as well. That's I'm totally open and game for that. Yep, there we go. So that's my demonstration for today. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. It's always a great honor to be able to paint for you guys and to have you show up and spend some time with me online. And let's see. Oh, Gita, you're welcome. And I'm glad you liked how I adjusted the bottle. I appreciate that so much. And thank you, Beth. This is fun, and I hope you guys too that are in my class that are here also really love this setup too. I think it's going to be a real fun one. We're going to learn a lot from it. Thank you so much. You guys have a really, really good afternoon, and I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye.